So what impact does TikTok, Shein, and the fast fashion industry have on the retail space? We're going to continue to tug on this thread. Joining us now is Brian Gildenberg, Retail City's managing director and co-host of the CPG Guys podcast. Brian, thanks for joining us. And I'm going to ask you that very question. What does the future hold now?
Well, we're all just going to buy cases of toothpicks, apparently. I'm very excited about that. No, I think there's a couple of things in here, and I think that I think Steve made an excellent point talking about the concept of discovery, and I think that's a lot of what you're seeing here, which is that the nature of how products are discovered has changed so fundamentally because of TikTok and the engagement that it has, and the way in which it serves that engagement up, which is algorithmically and harder for advertisers to manipulate and control. So as a result, all of the things that can connect to TikTok are different than the things that connect to Insta or to Facebook or to YouTube, which are platforms that large advertisers understand better. So it created an opportunity for Shein and Temu and Wish.com and other things to come along that kind of natively understood that sort of randomized, gamified, algorithmically driven demand generation and matched the sort of footprint of TikTok with their own footprint. So I think right now that's been the biggest shift. And I think one of the primary reasons why Shein and Temu have been as, short term as commercially or sales wise successful in the US as they've been.
Interesting. And we've touched on it a little bit, but the fact that there is this regulatory angst or risk or whatever you want to call it brewing around TikTok and its operations here in the U.S. But, I mean, you just mentioned some of the names of other competitors that are stepping in with a similar business model here. But we're not talking about U.S. companies that are doing it, at least not yet. Maybe X is on its way.
Okay, sure. Maybe it is. They got a ways to go to figure that out. Yeah. I think Shein and Temu, which are both relatively well-established businesses in China that know how to link up to that type of algorithm, I think that's fine. I do think it's important to keep in mind that TikTok is a very different thing than Shein and Temu, which are retailers. I think TikTok's move into commerce remind me a little bit of what Shopify tried to do, which is that they tried to run their own logistics network for a hot minute and then discovered that running a platform and running a warehouse are two very different exercises. I'm not 100% convinced that what TikTok's trying to do in that space will actually work, or that they'll be any good at it. They may be, they may not be. But I do think that the ability that TikTok has to generate demand in a particular way works well. I think the other thing with Shein and Temu that they've lucked into right now is the low price points, which suit one, consumers that are looking to save money right now as inflation has hurt their purchasing power, and two, expands the potential buying audience to teenagers who don't have a ton of money, but who are all of the people that are on TikTok. So the ability to convert teen demand, which Shein and Temu are quite good at because of the low price points that they sell at, is interesting. It's like taking Five Below and attaching it to TikTok.
How worried does Amazon need to be?
I think Amazon's always going to be concerned about anything that interrupts the discovery process because Amazon sells a lot of things. They don't make a ton of money doing that. They make a lot of money selling advertising, and their advertising is generated in a very specific way. So if you looked at Prime Day, for instance, and what Amazon was trying to do, both with the connection they had with TikTok, which was unbelievably strong during Prime Day, as well as through Amazon's own initiatives to engage shoppers in a more dynamic and sort of content-centric way, I think Amazon is already beginning to respond to that. And it will be interesting to see as TikTok continues, assuming it continues to be a big part of the consumer engagement landscape, does it do better connecting to Amazon, or does it do better trying to run its own commerce site? I think the jury would still be out on that.
So nail the point that Morgan was driving at, and that is the comfortability factor that American consumers may or may not feel doing business with Chinese apps and exchanging money with Chinese apps that may or may not be under the influence of the Chinese government. And whether the U.S. government's going to countenance it forever.
Yeah, I certainly think that if you look at Shein in particular and the kind of the curious ownership structure that it has. I mean, Temu is owned by Pinduoduo, which is a real company. I think there are certainly areas that you could see regulatory involvement start to restrict the types of Chinese companies that can work here. But I think in the end, if the consumer gets value out of something, especially for something that brings them joy like TikTok does, I really wonder day in, day out. My daughter's 14 years old and on TikTok all the time. Does she care that the Chinese owns it? I really don't think so. I think she just really likes her TikTok videos.
All right, Brian, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
All right.